People of New World, welcome back to the channel. It's me, Lamani, and today we're going to be talking top 3 PvP Mage builds. Now, before we get started, I owe you all an apology. I haven't been posting a lot in the last 2 weeks. I'm working on a pretty big project, and when I announce it, you'll all finally understand. Now, we're going to be talking a couple different builds. We'll be going through Fire Staff, Ice Gauntlet, Void Gauntlet setups, what's in the current meta, how to play each weapon, and just the top 3 general Mage builds. I'll say it doesn't include something like BBIG because I just didn't classify that as a Mage and wanted to give you something different. So let's dive into it, starting with the Fire Staff. Fire Staff is an odd place in the current meta. It's not necessarily meta per se because its damage is just outpaced by other ranged options, especially when you have things like the current Dex situation going on. And IG and VG give so much more team value, so this is kind of an independent sort of stat padding weapon, to be honest. It just lacks burst kill potential, CC, and other group utility. It's still a fun weapon to use, and I'm not saying you can't use it. I see people use it in wars and succeed, so go ahead and use it if you want to. All right, so with the Fire Staff, I'd say it's probably the most flexible of all weapons. So you can argue whether or not this is the absolute best. This is my personal favorite setup that I like to use, and I'm gonna warn you, I don't like using Flamethrower because I just hate it. So, going with the Fire Mage side, I go into Pillar of Fire, I go into Fireball, and we're looking for whatever damage and crit modification we can get. On our heavy attacks, we get cooldown reduction, and they cost 0 mana. I don't go for the mana back on heavy attacks. That's like 5 mana. At that point, it's just not worth it when I can just roll or do something else. We max out Fireball. This is our huge burst and cooldown reduction. And Pillar is a little weird because we want to try and open up a fight with it because we get 40% more damage if we were to hit somebody with it. Pillar is one of our flexibilities for sure, but overall we're looking for damage bonuses and we take the Rune of Helios. On the Pyromancer side, same thing, we're looking for damage modification with Pyromania. We go into Let It Burn just for some extra fortify to keep ourselves alive. And then I like to go for Burnout for the mobility option because I feel a little not mobile, I feel a little immobile when I have my Ice Gauntlet on. And then we'll take ability crits, add another burn. We really are looking for anything to make our heavy attacks do a little bit better. We don't need the mana things. We can use regen pots and roll around to get our mana back, but there are some pretty mana intensive things going on here. What I will say for flexes, if you're a Flamethrower player, you can either opt to get rid of Burnout because you don't want that mobility and take that instead, or you can get rid of Pillar and start to modify some of your passives. Now for the Ice Gauntlet, be ready. You're going to get 3 different IG builds that you could theoretically use with this. This first one is going to be for the damage farming. When we're looking at it, Ice Tempest side, we take all the passives and we max out Ice Storm because we want to get Ultimate Chill because we're just looking to get as much Ice Storm damage as humanly possible. We then go into the Builder side and take Ice Shower so that we have some self-peel. We take Entomb again for self-peel and a way to purify, and we don't go into really any of the passives other than blocking stamina. If you block with your Ice Gauntlet, you then can convert it and use that, and then right as your block breaks, you can pop into an Entomb to save your life a little bit longer. Otherwise, when you're looking at these, you can use any of the following Ice Gauntlet builds, especially if you're going to go into Spike, and use it with your Fire Staff. Personally, for a stat split, I think a 300 and 200 is perfectly fine, especially for things like War, but you have to think about the Fire Staff as kind of like a Dex sort of role, but for int. So going into 150 or even 100 con as well is perfectly fine. Onto weapons. On the Fire Staff, you really need Empowered Fireball. This is the biggest thing, and then you're looking for damage modifiers. For Absolute Bliss, we'd be looking for Flame Attunement and Enchanted, in my opinion. But again, get whatever you can to start off so that you can just get higher damage. When we're looking at the Ice Gauntlet, just go Crystalline Curse. We want something with Unending Thaw on it. This is the perfect option, and you can flex it into so many different builds. In both weapons, we'll be looking for an Opal here, just for extra damage, and you can go into making it an actual Rune Glass gem that does fire damage to get that extra tick so that we can charge our Heart Rune faster and get more overall fire damage into your build. For armor, I'd recommend fitting in Deadly Chill and then going into Refreshing or Refreshing Evasion because it does function similarly to a bow. Rezill, Shirking Fort, Freedom. On neck, we'll be looking for the classic Health Stam Recovery. On ring, we'll be looking for Invigorated, Punishment, Fire Damage, and Hardy. On earring, the classic Refreshing Toast, Refreshing or Refreshing Evasion, and then something like Regenerating. And then on gear, we'll be looking for gems that increase fire damage. All right, this next build is for the support players. Right now in the current war meta, there is a large need for IGVG medium players. This is mainly going to be looking for support in the idea of kill clump setup. So somebody grab wells, you'll throw down all sorts of roots, slows, stuns, screams, whatever and what have you, so that you can secure kills. So when we're looking at it, Ice Tempest side, we'll be maxing out Ice Storm just for extra damage, and then we'll be also taking ways to get mana, additional damage opportunities, and Heavy Freeze. On the Builder side, We'll be doing sort of the same thing, maxing out Ice Shower, maxing out Entomb. This gives us a free cleanse, gives us a way to get Ice Showers and get some solid damage off when we start to gear, and then we're getting Fortify cooldown reduction, and again, ways to survive. And when we look at the Void Gauntlet, this is going to be your main filler weapon to use, but you're going to be using your cooldowns for a ton of your group utility. So on the Annihilation side, we're looking for all the crit, cooldown, and damage modifiers. We're taking Scream for setups and survivability, Oblivion for all of the utility it brings as well, and going into Void Caller. On the Decay side, we'll max out Orb. We're looking to double pop that for the Rends and big AoE damage. We'll take reduced mana cost, and you can hold right click to reduce cooldowns in the meantime between fights. Overall with this build, you are just simply looking to get into the thick of it, get active, and get involved. Set up your team and call out some good clumps. The best stat split for this is 250 int, 50 focus, 200 con. You want that 50 focus because again, we're primarily using VG, but we also get cooldown there. And then the 250 int supplements for the Ice Gauntlet. It's a great split, it's great for utility, and you're pretty tanky so you can stay up in front. For your Void Gauntlet, you're going to want Scream perk, Chain Void, and then Keen. And then your Ice Gauntlet, you could run Crystalline Curse, otherwise look for something with Deadly Frost on it. For our gems, we'll be wanting Opals with Void damage. Now for gear, you're going to want to fit in Deadly Chill again, but then we're going to be looking for Void Gauntlet perks, Nullifying Oblivion, and if you can fit it in, Diminishing Orb is great. We'll then be looking for Shirking Fort, Refreshing, Rezill. That's going to be best on all your gear, and you'll be able to just stick in clumps. On Amulet, you'll be looking for health, stam recovery, and some kind of protection. On Ring, you do not need Hardy, so we'll be looking for something like Invigorated Punishment, Keen, and then a third perk. If you want to, you can fit in Hardy, but it is not needed in a medium setup. And then on Earring, we'll be looking for Refreshing Toast, Refreshing, Purifying Toast with this build. I would then throw a mix of Void damage gems in my gear. All right, now let's talk about my absolute favorite Mage build, and that's going to be straight Ice Spike IGVG. So what you'll be doing here, starting with the Ice Gauntlet on the Ice Tempest side, you'll max out your Ice Spikes so that you can get the triple hit to get those big one-shot combos. We'll then also max out Ice Storm because this is just absolutely free damage. When you combo this with Oblivion, people really underestimate how much damage they're taking when they have both ticking on them. So take advantage of that. We'll just take Cold Reach for extended damage on our basic attacks, Heavy Freeze to set up some kills, and Critical Frost for increased crit chance. Ultimate Chill, great here just for extra damage when you combo it with things like Ice Spike and Ice Storm together. On the builder side, very similar to what we've seen, it's going to be going into blocking stamina, Empowered Frost, Entomb for cleansing Tomb, and then we're going to be taking Defiant Freeze. We don't really need Refreshing Frost at all because we'll be getting Ice Refresh procs, and if you have Refreshing Move or something going on, there's a lot of cooldown reduction chances on your Ice Gauntlet. Now on your VG, it's going to be very similar to what you've just seen. This is pretty much the standard VG secondary build for DPS. You'll be going into Scream, Oblivion, and Orb. It's the same side on the Annihilation side. We're looking at maxing out Scream, maxing out Oblivion, and taking everything to increase our damage and crit chance. Don't take Forsaken Pact. This is kind of a bait, to be real with you. You're never really below 50% mana when you're at this point. You'll be topping up your mana and you're fine, so you don't really get that much uptime on your 10% damage. We'll then go into Void Caller as well, and then on the Decay side, max out Orb, take the mana reduction because the heal on the bottom doesn't really do anything when you're not focus scaled, and then Refreshing Harvest for just free resets when you're in between fights. My personal preference when playing this build, I like to play 300 int, 200 con, and then the rest into int. But if you're geared, you've got Shirking Forts, all kinds of things, you're just pretty comfy. I'd play as low as 150 con and more int and get the pretty girthy Ice Spikes. All right, for weapons here, things get a little bit flexible with the IG. So starting with the VG, I think going Putrefying Scream, Keen, and Keenly Jagged, running a Rune Glass Frozen Opal here for more dot ticks is just your best option. Now the IG is interesting. A lot of people might just say run Crystalline Curse, which you definitely can and get that Unending Thaw damage, Refreshing Move, and Free Enchanted. But our goal here is to hit Ice Spikes. So word on the street is using something like Ice Refresh, Keenly Empowered Keen is actually going to give you huge burst potential, and running it with an Opal, you roll, hit them with the big Ice Spike, and you have this really big damage spike chance. Now personally, I like running a Keen Vicious with Refreshing Move because it's just what I like to play. You can run any kind of setup that you'd like. It is a high damage, you're looking for burst, so if you want to run 3 damage perks, you go ahead, play your personal preference, but definitely get Ice Refresh in there somewhere. On gear, you need Ice Refresh or Unending Thaw, depending on which one you put on your IG, or if you didn't put either on. Make sure you get those two, then we go into Nullifying Oblivion, and you can go Diminishing Orb if you'd like. Otherwise, Shirking Fort, Refreshing, Rezill are going to be your best options. On neck, we'll be looking for the typical health, stam recovery, and then whatever protection. On ring, we'll be looking for Invigorated Punishment, Ice Damage, and Hardy. And then on the earring, we'll be looking for refreshing toast, refreshing, and then purifying toast or regenerating, whatever you'd like. Because we're looking for more spike damage, go rune glass, ice damage, gems, a mix of them for good resistances in your gear. All right, so that's what I have for you. High damage mage builds for PvP. Mage builds are in a little bit of an interesting spot, especially Fire Staff. We just don't really have that place for it with the Dex meta. Now, IG is mainly looking to as a support sort of meta where you're in that medium armor just looking to set up clumps, or a very niche role of being a spiker and running around in light armor and trying to burst down healers and random Dex players. It's definitely not the most like meta scene for wars, but it's definitely something fun. So I wanted to give you some options to play Mage. I hope you enjoyed the format. Hope you're all well. Hope you had a great holiday. And again, more content coming. Things should be ramping up, but a lot of big things we're working on here. So as always, I appreciate you watching. Hit the links down below. And if you need anything, just let me know. DM me in Discord. As always, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And thank you to every single one of you beautiful people for being you. Peace.